Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It's Labor Day weekend, and I guess it's unofficially the weekend in which you're supposed to stop wearing white and you're supposed to wear dark colors. Perfect timing for the fall fashion show from the Temple of Doom. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Afternoons LA with big updates about your second stimulus check and stimulus package, and a lot of great and fascinating details delivered just earlier today on Mornings LALATE. This is Afternoons LALATE, our 2-hour programming block that starts every day at 3:30 with the check. That goes to hazard pay, then FPUC, and finally rent. A new video every 30 minutes, so stay with me this afternoon. There's going to be a lot of incredible stuff I'm going to be detailing. This is part of a 3.5-hour programming block of 7 programs per day on this channel, LALATE, the fastest growing news channel online. Let me get to the incredible details about a second stimulus check, which I delivered earlier today, but I want to give some incredible updates. I explained earlier today that President Trump yesterday, in shocking details, said that he has $300 billion to allocate for second stimulus checks, and that he will send it out if there's no agreement from Congress. Now, I want to go over in this video routing times because this has caused a lot of confusion from viewers, and I don't want anyone to get confused. And yet sometimes, I don't know, people just assume things were sent out 3 weeks ago and that they're on their way. So, I love to go back in time, don't you? I mean, going back in time is, it's very out of date. Not a lot of people can relate to out of date things, unlike Nancy Pelosi. But let me get right to the details. The second stimulus check takes a 13-day routing time, people. It takes 13 days for the second stimulus check to literally land in your bank account. This is an important facet that some people seems to forego. I've mentioned a lot of times, but I want to make it very clear. If this was a weekday, and IRS was sending out stimulus checks today, it would take 10 days for the IRS to send the checks out. Literally 10 days for them to process the external sending out of the payments. Now, that's for electronic delivery, which is the fastest form of delivery out there. This is if you're receiving by ACH or direct deposit. You would then need 1 to 3 days for your bank to process the direct deposit or the ACH or the debit card receipt of the second stimulus check. So if we were sitting right today and the president came out and said, I'm issuing stimulus checks today, it would take 13 days from that date to actually receive the funds in your bank account. Now, so a lot of people have dropped in the comments that said, I thought we were receiving a check next week. No, how would you receive a check next week? It would have had to have been sent out 13 days ago. No one said they were sending out a check 13 days ago. IRS is not a bank. They can't, I think Nancy Pelosi might think it is. But IRS is not a bank, and so they can't literally send out payments in 24 hours. They just can't do that. The first stimulus checks were very slow going out. Oh my God, they were slower than, trying to add another round of extensions into Pelosi's hair, but they were very slow going out. This time they've really ramped it up. So they would get the stimulus checks out 10 days after it becomes law, and then I'm saying to you, hey, some banks take about 1 to 3 days to process the receipt of the funds. So let's say it came into your bank tomorrow. Some banks take about 1 to 3 days to process the funds. It doesn't mean that there's penalties against your account. It just takes time to process electronic receipt. So 13 days, if it was sent out today, for you to physically have access to the money in your bank account. All right, so that's the first thing. Second, when is the earliest it could get sent out? Well, it can't get sent out unless there's an executive order or there's a law. A law means that it's been signed by both houses of Congress, the House and the Senate, and the president has signed it. Now, let's slow that down for a second. For something to become a law, 3 things have to happen: a House approval, a Senate approval, and a president signing it. Washington is very slow, but even in the fastest environment, no three bodies of government can do something on the same day. So I have people literally asking me, I thought they're going to get this signed tomorrow. I thought, no, House, Senate, and the president don't all work on the exact same day. They just can't get anything done. Now, in describing these timelines, let me pause for a second. In describing these timelines, I am not vouching for, I'm not defending Congress, I am not sympathizing with them. I have slammed them left and right. I've spent exhaustive hours saying that how dare them not give you multiple stimulus checks back in April. The original CARES Act was to call for a stimulus check for April, May, June, and I think it was March also. March, April, May, June. 4 months of checks. That was the original draft of the CARES Act. You know what they did, those wonderful congressmen? They took it out. Both Republicans and Democrats, they took it out and said, we'll just do one check and we'll get to the other checks later. They never got to the original check, the other checks later. They took a vacation on your tax dollars. So I've been extremely critical of their inability to get things done. I've been extremely critical of their failure, their continual taking of vacations. I've been detailing that all in the month of July when they're on vacation. I was deeply critical of them coming back into session and then leaving again. They could have stayed in town. Mitch McConnell and Nancy Pelosi could have ordered them into town. The president could have ordered them in town. They could have done a lot, and it did jack nothing. Yeah, I changed the second word. You got to keep it clean. So I am certainly on book and on page with you about their inability to get things done. But what I want you to understand is how fast you would get the checks. All right, so for it to become a law, President, House, and Senate have to approve it. All this week, we've been talking about what's happening next week, which also has caused some confusion with some people as well. What's happening next week is the following indication from Meadows, Mnuchin, Pence, Trump, and even Kudlow, that next week in the Senate will be introduced a bill on behalf of the Republicans. And Mark Meadows' representation on routing times is the following. Remember, this is Mark Meadows. I'm not introducing your bill. I haven't written your bill. I'm not writing your check. I would do it. I would have sent you checks months ago if I was in the Senate. I wouldn't have been playing this jack game right now. No, absolutely not. I'm telling you what Mark Meadows is saying. So if Mark Meadows wants to go on vacation next week and disappear for 3 months, don't come to me and say, where's Mark Meadows? I didn't write the bill. But this is Mark Meadows' representation that next week the bill will be introduced. And within 1 week from next week, it will be passed by both houses of Congress and become law. Let me make that clear again. Next week, the bill is introduced. And within 1 week, which is not that week, it's not next week, it's the week after, it would become law. So let's make this very clear. When would it become law? Not next week, the week after. So under that time regards, you would then look at the week, not next week, but the week after, and that this is on Mark Meadows' representations, 13 days after, not next week, but the week after, you would literally have access to the funds. I don't mean it's going to get sent out. I don't mean it's going to start to get sent out. I mean 13 days after, not next week, but the week after, you would have the funds under Mark Meadows' representations. Okay, there's that. Are you going to have the funds next week? No. Who's sending you? You would never have the funds next week unless it had been sent out 13 days prior to today. I thought it was going to become law next week. No one ever said it was going to become law. They're coming back in session on Tuesday. Monday's a holiday. You got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Could they have done it? Could they do it in 3 days? Absolutely, they can do it in 3 days. Will they do it in 3 days? No, of course not. These are lazy SOBs. They got 1 day for the House, 1 day for the Senate, and 1 day for the President. They could absolutely do it next week and have it become law next week. But Mark Meadows' representation is it's going to take 1 week to become law after being introduced. All right, so based upon that, what happens next? Well, there is the possibility that not next week, but the week after, the president takes executive action. This is why this morning's broadcast was so important, because you needed to understand when would the president likely take executive action and send out to 160 million Americans $300 billion in funds available, which comes out to about 1,875 households, exactly enough money for $1,200 stimulus checks, when would the president act upon it? Well, the president's not going to do it next week. We clearly know the president would never send out stimulus checks next week at the same time he's introducing a bill for stimulus checks. But when would he likely do it? He would likely do it the week after this coming week, when the House approves the bill, the Senate approves the bill, because it's run by Democrats. Boy, the Senate would approve the bill because it's run by Republicans, and the week after, it would land in the Temple of Doom, and the Temple of Doom say no. No. And it would literally die a quick death. This is a scenario. I'm not telling you this is going to happen. I'm telling you a scenario. And at that time, the president would act upon it and send out the second stimulus checks. So, as you're looking at the calendar, could you count 13 days from next week to get the stimulus checks? No. I mean, no one in their right mind is going to get this voted into law next week. It's just not going to happen. They could do it, but they're not going to because they're lazy. They don't move that fast. Could they could it become law not next week but the week after, and you count 13 days from there? Absolutely. That's Mark Meadows' representation. Mark Meadows, Steve Mnuchin, Larry Kudlow, all these people, Mike Pence, all have said that there's going to be a deal that's going to be a law, a $500 billion stimulus package approved, becoming law, introduced next week and becoming law the week after. That's what they've said continually. Under that representation, it will be 13 days from that date. What's ironic is that if that's the exact same week that troubles ensue in the House, it would also be 13 days from that date from the president to issue an executive order. Again, the president would likely issue an executive order not next week, but the week after. What's going on, and why is this so hideously tied up? It's actually really great news, because what you have to understand is that finally someone is working to get you stimulus checks. I saw some of the comments this morning, and some people were just besides themselves about a couple things. One, they were beside themselves that maybe this is October. Well, let's look at this. I mean, let's look at the calendar. It is, if the day at which anything becomes law for stimulus checks or becomes executive order by stimulus checks is September 16th, well, add 13 days to that. 28th. It's about October that way. What if it's September 17th or September 20th that it becomes law, becomes executive order? When will you get the stimulus checks? October. How could you get the stimulus checks in September? You would literally have to have everything done very quickly in just a few days, and it's just not happening. So the likelihood under the representation that Mark Meadows is suggesting is that it's becoming law not next week, but the week after. It's introduced next week, it becomes law the week after. Then you would add 13 days of that. That's about late September. The president's threat is consistent with that timeline as well. As to these representations by Trump and Mnuchin and Meadows, I have a few personal comments. There's some really bad reporters out there, and I'm not going to call them out because I just don't have time for that. And I don't mean channels. I mean broadcast print reporters who literally are taking people's quotes and using only a half of the quote or one sentence of the quote, or using a quote from 4 weeks ago and saying it's the current situation today. And so people always ask me, why did that person report it? I don't employ them. Go read crappy publications. Go do it yourself. I'm not going to read crappy publications. I don't do that. If you want to go read crappy publications, by all means, go ahead. But here are the complete quotes over the last couple of days. We've had $300 billion ready to go. All Congress has to do is say, use it. I'd like to use it without their permission, but I guess I'm not allowed. We're willing to spend it. I'd like to get approval from Congress. There's a theory that I don't have to do it, but I'd rather be upfront, and I'd like to get approval from Congress. That's the complete quote. The complete quote says that he thinks he has the authority to do it. He'd rather ask Congress's authority first, but he thinks he has the authority to do it, and that the money is there. That's the complete quote. The abridged quote that you're seeing someplace is only the part that says, I don't think I can do it. The next sentence says, he thinks that he can. So that's the first part of people cutting off people's quotes. The next one is Mnuchin, who appeared before a House subcommittee this week. And this is how some publications are running the quote. Let's move forward on a bipartisan basis on points we can agree upon. The president and I want to move forward. Okay, there's nothing in there about stimulus checks. Okay, let's read the rest of the quote. What's more important now is getting money to American workers, American families. There's a tremendous agreement on what we should be doing right away. I would publicly say I'd be willing to sit down at the negotiating table with the speaker on no conditions whatsoever. I'd like to extend enhanced unemployment benefits and send out more economic impact checks, payments. Guess what economic impact payments are? That's stimulus checks. So there's a complete quote. Even Mitch wants to fly into this interview. You know, when you cut people's quotes and only use a sentence of it, you can make it sound like everything you wanted to make it sound like. And I'm not going to be partisan here, but I'm certainly going to say that there's one publication out there, news publication, who consistently takes people's quotes and says them and abridges them to make it sound completely the opposite, antithesis of what they actually said. And I have people coming in the comments and saying, what is about that publication that said that well, because they cut the quote. How about we run the complete quote? Now, you know, this happens both on Republican and Democratic slanted publications, but it's really, I mean, this is why the Purple Power is the Purple Power. We don't play friggin' ass games. We run the complete quote. Then there was Mike Pence, who, boy, he really caused a lot of confusion. Mike Pence was asked about the stopgap federal budget bill yesterday. Remember, that's the federal budget bill. It has nothing to do with stimulus checks. And so someone said to him, what's the deal with that between Mnuchin and Pelosi? He says, they got it done, and there's no stimulus checks in there. Okay, guess what those same publications did? They said, Mike Pence said you're not getting stimulus checks. No, he said you're not getting stimulus checks in the federal budget bill. Boy, it's just... In fact, he actually said you're getting stimulus check. In the other part of the quote, he said, no one as his president wants to send out stimulus checks. No one wants to give direct payments to American families more than the president, Donald Trump. We'll send those checks to American families and help them get through this tough time. I mean, I just don't know what clear quote is that. Now, some people, I understand, clearly don't understand when elected officials say the word direct payments or say the words economic impact payments. They don't understand that as actually a stimulus check. When you got a stimulus check, it actually says that terminology. There is no actual word stimulus check in the CARES Act or the second stimulus package. They call it economic impact payments. So, I mean, we have all these people. And then Larry Kudlow, who, gotta say, he is always the guy that's sort of half off his rocker, said that we could certainly survive without stimulus. We'll be fine. Boy, if you want to Google Larry Kudlow, every single article is about that quote. And it basically says Larry Kudlow doesn't think you should get stimulus. Okay, let's run the remainder of the quote. Larry Kudlow says, I think stimulus checks should go out next week. Should go out right away. You know. And that's that. So how soon? So let's recap. If something became law today or executive order today, when would you get stimulus checks tomorrow? No, 13 days from tomorrow. 13 days from the when that becomes effective. How fast can Congress pass something? They can pass something in 3 days. Do they ever pass something in 3 days? No. How fast do they pass something? Well, Mark Meadows' representation will take 2 weeks. It'll be introduced in 1 week and it'll become law the next week. How fast can something become executive order? Minutes, within minutes. The president can literally go down to his table and write something up and become executive order. And that situation, you add 13 days to that to receive the payments. FPUC, which I really didn't even get to. I wanted to do that as well. FPUC has its own routing time. How fast would you get FPUC 2.0 payments? How fast, if FPUC is extended under a stimulus package 2.0, under a stimulus package in 2 weeks from now, if FPUC is give an extension, just sort of like Nancy Pelosi's hair, how fast would you get the money? Well, that's based upon the routing times of federal funds and the routing times of your state, which Lily's asking me to answer 50-something state questions, and I can't do it. But I can tell you this, that based upon LWA, the routing times are very fast now. They're about 2 weeks. So if you saw something become law for FPUC today, and it was a work day, I would add about 2 weeks from then for your state to start sending out the payments, and I might add an additional week to actually receive it. So I would say 2 to 3 weeks from the day something became law from FPUC for you physically to have the money. And it just depends on what state you're in, because it's just all over the place. Coming up next after this is hazard pay, and I will be doing a little bit more of that as well, because that's causing a lot of confusion as well. It's a big recap weekend with a lot of breaking details, but also giving clarity to some issues that you have as well. Hit that subscribe and alert button so you get a subscription to the Hot Mess Express, so you are subscribed and you get alert every time a new video goes live. If you're subscribed, there should be a little red button next to your name. I think I said blue. It is not a partisan button. If it was purple, I could make it purple, but I can't. And so hit that on the front of this channel, subscribe and alert. And finally, like this video. Liking this video helps so the video appears higher in the algorithm. Yeah, I'll say it. Today's videos that this channel is competing against is one that says President Trump has now authorized second stimulus checks to go out. He's not. The other video said that there was the second stimulus check. There was a second stimulus package agreement effectuated overnight. There was not, and it refers to the stopgap between Mnuchin and Pelosi, which has nothing to do with stimulus. Boy, you see what I'm competing with, as always. Join me. Coming up next is Hazard Pay. As always, stay informed, stay smiling, stay focused, and stay valid.